Okay, we're here in the orchard today to do a bit of weeding. Now, normally when I do weeding, this is my tool of choice, a custom-made Hula-Hoe. And Hula-Hoes are great, especially when the soil's nice and moist, for just digging right underneath the surface of the soil and just scraping it clean. You can come back later and just rake up the loose weeds and throw them away. But there's a lot of situations where a Hula-Hoe really isn't going to be your best tool. And those situations are kind of going up next to like a chain link fence or a block wall or a driveway or concrete pavers, or even like today we're underneath our fruit trees. We have some irrigation lines just underneath the surface of the soil, so we don't really want to do too much digging. Also, we don't really want to disturb the roots of the fruit trees as well. So we've got a better way that is herbicide free and that is actually going to take the weeds and consume them to the point where they are usable fertilizer for the ground. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Right now I just want to show you an example of the type of weeds that are going to be hard to get any other way but with a torch. You see these weeds right here, they're growing up. You can't really get a tool in there. If you kind of get your hands in there, start pulling it, you're going to tear your hand up. And so we got those types of weeds. And then you look under here underneath these fruit trees, a lot of these would be fine with the Hula-Hoe, but you see I got these irrigation lines that are buried right underneath there. Plus these trees are just starting to bud right now, and I really don't want to disturb the roots right now. Let me go show you some other things. You see this crabgrass, this Bermuda grass growing in these rocks? Now the only way you could really get that out of there without any herbicide, and you'd even have a tough time with herbicide to kill all that crabgrass, is to remove each of those rocks one by one and then replace them after you're done. And then we have these weeds right here, which are growing in between these pavers. It would be really hard to get to these like this, growing in between rocks. Weeds growing in the cracks of sidewalks and driveways. Look at these curb weeds. What the weed torch is the best for is stuff like this. You see this crabgrass just growing right in between those rocks. And then we have all of this clover growing in between these rocks right here. And underneath it is like a gravel surface, so it's very difficult to get any sort of tool underneath there. The great thing about the weed torch is you just have to touch it to the weed and it essentially kills it. So this is your standard weed torch, okay? You can get this at any big box hardware store or welding store, anything like that. And this is just your standard barbecue size propane bottle, and we are going to hook the propane torch up to the propane bottle, and we are going to attach it to this VersaMule Load Harness so that we can have it on our back while we go around the property and aren't entangled by a hose that's tethered to us. Now, one way that we can do this is we could attach this to the propane bottle and simply just set the propane bottle in a trash can. But for demonstration purposes today, what we're going to do is we're going to load the propane bottle directly to the frame. Now let me show you how you do that. So first off, let's get the propane bottle secured to the frame of the VersaMule. Now the VersaMule comes equipped with 2 load straps, one at the top and one at the bottom. So this first one, we're just going to simply hook it through this top and loosely just attach it and secure it up there. We're going to take this bottom strap right here, wrap it around the propane bottle as best we can. Cinch it tight. Make sure it's on there good before you do that. Okay, and then last, cinch this top one tight too. Then you see it's securely fastened to the frame. It's not going to go anywhere. Now what we need to do is take this propane and attach it to this propane bottle, or take the propane torch rather and attach it to the propane bottle. One thing I've noticed is that this O-ring on here is cracked. So we're going to have to replace this O-ring before we get going. So we're going to do that real quick. It's always good to take a look at these O-rings on here to make sure that they're not cracked, because a little leak while you have an open flame of propane could not be good. And while we're talking about this, I think it's also good to point out 2 more things that you're going to want to have handy before you get started with anything like this. You'll either want to have a fire extinguisher nearby, or you're going to want to have a garden hose all strung out, not coiled up, and turned on, ready to go. In case there is a little bit of a fire that gets away from you, you can easily put it out before it becomes too big. But the big thing is to really assess the proper places to do these weed burns. Not every place is good for a weed burn. Areas of really tall weeds that are all in an open field, that's not the place you want to burn. You want to burn little isolated patches of weeds that are growing up next to things that aren't going to burn. Again, concrete walkways, stone pavers, chain link fences, that sort of thing. You might be tempted to think these weeds would be okay to use with the weed torch, but because they're in a bark, stay away from this sort of weed. Best to pull this by hand or use the Hula-Hoe for something like that. So I'm not sure if you could see the difference between these 2 O-rings, but one is severely cracked and the other is nice. But we're gonna install this one. Just slide that on over the top. That should fit on there. Hopefully pretty snug. It probably went with a size smaller, but we're gonna see how it goes. Now, on this propane right here, let me move this out of your way. The outer thread is righty-tighty, but this inner thread that this particular propane screws into is opposite thread. So you're gonna screw it left hand in order to tighten it. And you're going to screw it right that way if you want to loosen it afterwards. You'll really frustrate yourself and if you don't know that. So let's get this all fastened up. Now, one thing is, this is a torch. It's not a flamethrower. So you'll get yourself into trouble if you go around calling it a flamethrower, because a flamethrower is technically, in the Geneva Conventions, a weapon of mass destruction. So it does not throw a flame, it just projects a flame that's about yay long. And there's a big difference in that. Okay, so let's get going. Loosen the straps of the VersaMule a little bit, make sure the straps aren't tight.